Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Thursday, December 12th, 2024. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one, where people have been stepped through the worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them, even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get the maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that, before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. And if you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. And we hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives, and secondarily because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, these days, the best thing to do is to send us an email. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if we get a comment or a question or feedback or a testimonial from you, we will address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred, so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. And we greatly appreciate whenever anybody chooses to do that, because it makes it infinitely easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention we have with this work is to be a service, and that is just so much easier to do when we know how these things are landing for you. We are on Zoom again today because Blog Talk Radio is down, and it may never come back. It may never come back up. We don't know. We're exploring other options. We are actively working to find different ways to present this material and have it recorded so that it's available on an ongoing basis. And so today we're on Zoom, and if you find us on Zoom, Jeannie Ryce has been sending out wonderful emails summarizing our work and our progress. And I'm looking back through the emails that she sent. One of them says, the meeting ID on Zoom is 868-8143-4479, and the passcode is 123456. So if you have Zoom, We are quite hopeful that we'll be able to maintain this meeting ID and passcode for the foreseeable future, or whenever we need to use Zoom if we're not able to be up on Needle or Blog Talk Radio. In the interim, you can explore the Needle app. It's spelled N-E-D-L. And if you go to your app store and you look for the Needle app, N-E-D-L, you'll be able to listen to hundreds, if not thousands, of different radio stations around the globe, but you'll also be able to follow us every time we go live. All you have to do is look for the Dr. Michael Ryce, all one word, Dr. Michael Rice. So if you download the Needle app and you search for Dr. Michael Ryce, and then just give it a like, and that means they'll ask you to put in your phone number, and then every time we go live, you'll get a notification that we're live on Needle. And that's going to happen hopefully, perhaps even as early as next week. We're working with the creator of Needle to make sure that we have an operational station, so to speak, a studio with them. And whatever we say will get broadcast out on the Needle platform as an active radio station, and it will get recorded, and we'll have a transcript of it that we can then post on Michael and Jeannie's website as archives. So these are all just little insight into what's going on behind the curtain to try and make this stuff available. And we have lots of hours that have been put into it already, and I'm sure there'll be a few more before it gets ironed out. And we will do our best to keep you posted. You can check with Jeannie Ryce at Jeannie, Jeanie, at whyagain.org. WHYAGAIN.org. And now, since we have the time, I will go back to the book Butterflies Are Free to Fly, written by Stephen Davis. It's absolutely free. It's a free Kindle book. You can also get the PDF of it basically anywhere on the internet. Butterflies Are Free to Fly. And what Stephen is doing is he's writing this book and making it available absolutely free, just like Michael and Jeannie Ryce make so much of their work available absolutely free, because he's trying to share with others who are on a spiritual journey what he's discovered. And this part of the book is labeled Part 3, Questions and Answers. And he starts it with a quote from the character Trinity from the movie The Matrix. And the quote is, "I know why you're here, Neo. I know what you've been doing. I know why you hardly sleep. I know why you live alone. And why night after night you sit at your computer. You're looking for him. I know because I was once looking for the same thing. And when he found me, he told me I wasn't really looking for him. I was looking for an answer. It's the question that drives us, Neo. It's the question that brought you here." Close quotes. That's from the character Trinity from the movie The Matrix. And so here's a preface to Part 3. Stephen writes, "Robert Scheinfeld says that when you move into the second half of the human game, which he calls Phase 2, there's no point anymore to ask why. And there are some good reasons for that. You cannot think your way out of this game. It isn't a matter of understanding, but feeling. Well, here's a parallel to the way of mastery. Very early on in the first or second lesson, it says, the book, The Way of the Heart, the first of the 3 books of the Way of Mastery. The book, The Way of the Heart, is not about the way of the intellect. It's about the way of the awakened heart. It calls the intellect a garbage can shoved full of trivialities. It's been shoved full of trivialities by your family of origin, by the language you learned, by the friends and teachers you've had. And all it can do as an intellect is spit back to you what's been shoved into it. So here, Robert Scheinfeld says, you can't think your way out of this game. It's not a matter of understanding. It's a matter of feeling. Asking why is about trying to understand something. And occasionally you'll hear me shift around and squeak and pause my reading because somebody else has come in and I have to monitor the Zoom meeting. So it's not a matter of understanding, it's a matter of feeling. And when you ask why, it's usually a diversion. It's a distraction from doing the process that Robert Scheinfeld outlines, or Michael Ryce's worksheets, the reality management worksheet, to dismantle any mental, emotional upset you're feeling. And the answers that you might come up with for a question like why, they really don't matter and they really don't change anything. He says, it's true that once you're inside your cocoon, there really is only one answer to the question why, and that is because your infinite I has created it the way it is as a gift for you. On the other hand, we seem to be very curious as players in this game, and why can be something that excites us and interests us. There's nothing wrong with that. Besides, you've gotten this far in the book. You're well aware we're talking about a new and very radical approach to life, one that is often the opposite of everything we were taught while we were in the movie theater, while we were in the first part of our lives, while we believed in our religions and we believed everything our parents taught us because they knew all the answers. Since you've gotten this far in this book, you're well aware that we're talking about something that's 180 degrees off of what most of the people in your culture and in your religions and in your spiritual groups even believe. So Stephen goes on. So for me, it's totally understandable and very legitimate to ask various questions so that you better understand how this new model works and to be clear about how it is different from anything else that you've ever encountered. And to allow you to more easily let go of any previous false knowledge by seeing that there are new and viable alternatives to answer the more important questions that occupy our thoughts. I also think that if you say, don't ask why, it can be used as a cop-out sometimes to avoid having to come up with answers to tough questions. Any model that is worth its salt should be able to logically and consistently withstand all kinds of scrutiny. As a result, I welcome all legitimate questions. And by legitimate, I mean that the question comes from a sincere desire to learn and fill in some gaps in our understanding of the new model, or perhaps questions that result from actual testing of the model in operation. Questions coming from the ego, from Maya, from an attitude of proving the other person wrong, or simply to intellectually debate, these questions have no interest for me. They're always just another attempt to justify judgment or belief that were formed inside the movie theater. So in the following pages, you will find some of the questions that I had and have been asked, and the answers I came up with from my own research and my own experience as a scout. Some of the answers will be very short, and others will fill a normal-sized chapter. None of the answers should be taken as, quote, capital T truth, close quotes. They are simply the most logical, consistent, and best guesses I can find, especially since some of them deal with questions about what's happening on the other side of the quantum field, which we can never know with any certainty. Now, this particular paragraph that I just read is a big part of why I would share a book like this on the Mind Shifters radio show. This is almost exactly the same thing that Christian Sundberg says in his book, A Walk in the Physical. When he has a question and answer section, he says the same thing. This is just the best guess I have at this point. This is the best set of answers that resonate with me that I've been given by my teachers or my, the entities that inform my work. It's not to be taken as the gospel truth and then believed and then lived from. So he goes on. If these answers are not the truth, then at least they serve the purpose of demonstrating that there are logical alternatives to the old and inconsistent and even contradictory answers that we believed for so long. The main point is to realize that there are other answers to our burning questions about life that really make sense. That this model is complete and workable and is consistent with the latest findings in quantum physics, and that we can begin to let go of the old belief systems that keep us limited, and we can go totally radical. So that's the preface. Here's chapter 22. Is this really one big hologram? Here's the question. I thought when we speak about a holographic universe, it means that we're all part of one big hologram. Answer? That's a very common misconception, but it simply can't be true. If the neurophysiologist Carl Pribram is correct when he says the human brain is a holographic receiver and translator. Here's his quote. The brain is itself a hologram, which mathematically constructs what we call hard, close quotes, reality, by relying on input from a frequency domain. In other words, light is a frequency of energy. Sound is a frequency of energy. The touch that we experience is translated as from a frequency of energy. And so he goes on to say, if that's true, then there cannot be one big hologram. If the physical universe we live in were one giant hologram that was shared by all of us, there would have to be one giant brain to receive it as it was downloaded from the field. The field of what? The field of quantum possibilities. And convert it into its natural wave state, or from its natural wave state, into the particles we could perceive. And then we would all perceive those particles exactly the same way. We would all see exactly the same reality. That obviously does not happen. Each person, in fact, seems to see a slightly different reality than anyone else. In fact, our mental hospitals are full of people that we call psychotic, and these people see a very different reality than the rest of us. In parentheses, he says, psychosis means an abnormal condition of the mind and is a generic psychiatric term for a mental state that's often described as involving a, quote, loss of contact with reality, close quotes. People experiencing psychosis may report hallucinations or delusional beliefs, close parentheses. So if I'm standing in a room next to someone who is psychotic, You might see a pleasant, safe atmosphere. The person experiencing psychosis, on the other hand, might see a torture chamber. And that would simply not be possible if the world were one big hologram that we are both perceiving. It is possible, however, that you are each perceiving your own reality, a separate hologram downloaded into each separate brain. For example, a simple car accident viewed by 10 different people can have 10 different, quote, realities, close quotes, of what happened. And this is right in line with what we observe in Dr. Michael Ryce's work and the CIA website, where it says, your perception does not record reality. Your perception constructs a reality for you each and every moment. Stephen goes on and says, you could walk out of a restaurant and your friend could comment on how rude the waitress was. And although you heard the waitress say the same words, you thought she was fine and helpful. Or, quote, who are you going to host your website with? And then you respond with, quote, XYZ company. And then your friend says, what, them? And then you say, yeah, why? And then your friend says, I tried them once. It was a horrible experience. They really screwed me up. And then you reply, well, I've been hosting with them for 10 years and I've always had great service, and their website never went down. There's an even better example I assume has happened to all of us at one point or another. You see someone walking down the street and you turn to a friend and say, wow, is that Brad Pitt? And your friend looks and says, he doesn't look anything like Brad Pitt. And you insist, yes, he does. He looks exactly like Brad Pitt. So what's happening here? When you look at the movies or the pictures in a magazine, you, quote, see Brad Pitt in a particular way. And the person you saw walking down the street looked just like that to you. But your friend, on the other hand, sees Brad Pitt in movies or magazines very differently, and also sees the person on the street differently, and therefore they don't agree with you. If we all lived in a giant common hologram, in other words, one big holographic universe, we would all see both Brad Pitt and the person walking down the street in the same way. And there would be a common agreement on how they look. So each human brain receives and translates its own separate hologram downloaded to it from its own infinite eye from the field of quantum possibilities. This is, of course, inherent in the truth, quote, you create your own reality, close quotes. If we would just pay attention to what those words really say and mean. So here's the quote again, you create your own reality. Way of Mastery says, the first axiom, you only experience the results of your choices. I've distilled it down over the years into this following two statements. Statement number one, you have the infinite capacity to choose the focus of your conscious awareness in each new present moment. Statement number two, it is the focus of your conscious awareness in each new present moment that actually creates your experience of life in that moment. Same observation, same core truth, probably a lot of the same source material that gave rise to these statements. Chapter 23 in the book, Butterflies Are Free to Fly. Here's a question. If we don't share one big common hologram, how can you and I go out at night and see the same stars or watch the same movie or see the same people? How could someone else agree with me so much on what we call, quote, reality, close quotes, unless we were actually seeing the same thing? Answer? Well, before we talk about whether you and someone else are actually seeing the same reality. I have to find out who you think this, quote, someone else, close quotes, is, who is agreeing with you. Do you think they really exist? Question. Oh, well, let's say, okay, so what about the other people who appear in my hologram? Aren't they real, or is my infinite I creating them too? Answer. The first thing you have to remember is that nothing in your hologram is, quote, real, close quotes. Not the people, not this book you're reading, not the eyes you're reading the book with. It's all a hologram. And by definition, a hologram isn't real. At least not in the way we've always thought about things as being, quote, real, close quotes. So let's change the question a little because I know what you're trying to ask. Let's ask the question, do other people I see in my hologram exist as separate individuals? Are they players in their own right, as I am, with their own infinite eyes? Or are they just created by my infinite eye from my personal hologram and they have no life of their own? Isn't that the question you're asking? Even among the growing number of people who understand how life works in a holographic universe, there is no real agreement on the answer to this question. And that's a good example of why some of these questions aren't really important. And they don't really play a role in the daily workability of these concepts. Some of the people that ask these questions have decided that their infinite I creates everything and everyone that they see in their holograms, and they insist that no one else exists independently from them. And that may well be true, and maybe one day we'll find out, and maybe we won't. On one hand, it's very important to realize and remember that everything we experience and everyone in those experiences is created by our own infinite I, and can be so easy to forget that we assign an independent power to whom we see as, quote, out there, close quotes. And we make them seem real in a way that they may not be. Therefore, it's very helpful to emphasize that nothing and no one can appear in your holographic universe that your infinite I has not created or agreed to. So it might be useful to adopt the belief that you are creating the other people that you encounter in your life and that they don't exist outside of your hologram. However, for me, this smacks of too much solipsism, which is an overtone I don't resonate with. And here's a quote from a philosopher: if only I matter, then other people, animals, environments only matter insofar as they impact me. This may be an antisocial philosophy. So here's what makes the most sense to me and feels the most comfortable. If the holographic universe is like a total immersion movie, someone had to write the script for everything that happens in that holographic movie. And that someone is your infinite I. However, that script could be very limited and would be very limited and lonely if you were the only actor in it. And there are God knows how many other infinite eyes in the greater metropolitan infinite land who have players representing them as well. So let's say that my infinite I wants me to experience a car accident for whatever reason, which is exactly what my infinite I did, parentheses, close parentheses. My infinite I could create a hologram where I have that car accident all by myself with no one else involved. And that is what's happened to me, and that's fine. But let's say for some reason my infinite I would prefer for me to experience a car accident that involved other people rather than just me. My infinite I could send Infinite-mail around Infinite Land asking if there's anyone else who wants to have their player be a part of this car accident. Most car accidents today involve more than one person, so apparently there's a lot of interest in Infinite Land for this kind of holographic experience. Therefore, My infinite eye gets some positive info mail responses from other infinite eyes, and together, these infinite eyes work out the details and they write a joint script for the accident or this movie. But there's one catch. No player can say or do anything in any other player's hologram that their own infinite eye has not approved. In other words, whatever one player says or does to another player has been requested and approved by its infinite eye. And this is how you can think of it in this complex way and realize that no one can be a victim of anything that is said or done in any hologram they experience simply because their own infinite eye has either written the script or had a 100% approval of the script. No victims, no perpetrators, ever, period. So again, we're in this realm of understanding or trying to make a, a, a logical framework that helps us understand how we might be okay to just go along and accept whatever unfolds in life and understand that as we are okay with that, even if it it resonates a strong, intense, unpleasant emotion inside of us, we can use that, as Guy Finley says, as a lesson that we need to learn. I have a number of people in my caseload recently who've been handed life lessons by the flow of life. And what we mean by that is, as they were living their life, they felt a strong negative response surging up within them. And my work, as I work with people, is to help them realize that the strong surging of negative response that comes up within them is not created by the outside events. It's created by how they choose to interpret and put an interpretation on these negative or these events that are neutral and that resonates something negative within them. And if people move far enough along the spiritual path, they get to a place one day where they can actually feel that everything that happens, even those things that stir up negative emotional responses in them or physical pain in them, is a gift that reveals to them something they need to let go of, some personal work they need to do. I had a, a patient on my caseload this week who had a very good friend who said something, and in response to what this very good friend of theirs said, my patient felt like a dagger in the heart. And a week later, they were able to start softening and see how that was a gift. Because since that experience, when their friend, a very good friend of theirs, said something that they interpreted as like there was a dagger in their heart, my patient had bubbling up to the surface 2 or 3 traumas from the past that they had completely denied and suppressed. And now they're at a conscious level where my patient can start dismantling the trauma energies that are associated with it. My patient can start dismantling the false negative beliefs about self that my patient had downloaded years ago in these interactions with life. How do I get to the point where I can even start to entertain the thought that everything that happens to me, whether it's a car accident or a lover leaving me or one of my family members dying or me getting a cancer diagnosis, how do I even begin to get into the mindset where that can be seen as a gift and a blessing? Well, I don't know how anybody else is going to do it, but I know I've gradually moved toward that position by having life experiences that I interpret in a way that leave me feeling the truth of how my core, my essence, is not my body. It's not my thoughts about myself. It's not what somebody else thinks about me. It's this intangible core that can't be chipped, dented, rusted, faded, or broken in any way. And the more I have the felt sense that that's who I really am or what I really am, the closer I move to being able to be viewing any life event, even if it involves physical ache and pain or significant financial loss or a friend rejecting me and refusing to talk to me or my spouse deciding to get a divorce. I can view any of those things as a gift, as a revelation for me of what exists within me at a thought level, at an emotion level, at a traumatic energy level that I would be better off releasing and processing through and holding a space of love for rather than hiding it from myself or feeding the negative conclusion that this is bad or wrong and never should have happened. So we're here on Zoom. There are 4 of us on the call. Potential is there for other people to be listening in the future. So if you've got a comment or a question about this, rather intense intellectual set of structures of thoughts, but they're all designed to help reinforce the conclusion that you're safe and that you're not a victim and that it's all going to be okay in the bottom line. So I'm going to shift focus back to, and we've got about 20 minutes left. I'm going to shift focus back to the way of mastery. We're in lesson 34 of the way of mastery, and where we left off is right at the beginning of a section titled, "You have come with a mission." And the text reads, "Indeed then, beloved friends, you cannot have an ordinary day any longer. You might as well accept the fact that you've come here with a mission. You are a bringer of light. You are a bringer of a new day or a new dawn. You are that which extends the love of creation into creation by your willingness to let the light transfigure your humanity. Your humanity is transfigured as you embrace your humanity and you see that it is all sacred. For the spell of illusion is to believe that a body or that life as a body mind is somehow a mistake. That is a fearful world outside, that there is one limited, small world, and that the only thing you can do is to put all of your energy into trying to survive. And that all you can do is block your feelings and pretend that they're not there in an attempt to deny the power of the Christ that you truly are. You have the power to bring the miracle of love and the remembrance of the atonement into the physical realm each moment. You are indeed unlimited in all ways forever. The mind that serves the Holy Spirit is the Christ mind. The mind of Abba, Father, the Creator, the capital S self, the capital S self of your very soul. These are all the same thing. These are just words pointing at this energy of consciousness, this one mind. And the mind that serves the Holy Spirit is indeed unlimited forever. And this capital S self that is part of an extraordinary family The lineage that can and indeed can be traced through the Jewish nation, the Jewish families, can be traced back through that lineage, the family, the nation that was birthed. It shapes itself all the way back into Egypt and Persia. It has the same roots in ancient India. And it is indeed, it has roots beyond this physical earth. You are incarnating the mind of Christ into the world, and therefore you are not alone. And your role should never be minimized by you. Please understand that the culmination of this book that we're calling The Way of Knowing has been the desire and attempt to invite you more and more and even more deeply into the felt sense of knowing the capital T truth of who you are and what you're here to do as awakening the Christ. And yes, we know that the mind hits its points of fear and it must plateau out for a week or two or a year or 10 lifetimes before it's willing to step further. And yet, even as we know that, you are free. You're free even in the midst of your deepest fears to say yes to this powerful transfiguration. For the fact of the matter is that darkness holds no power over light. It is always when you are at your point of greatest sense of darkness or your greatest feeling that the light just cannot quite get into you, that you could not possibly ever be enlightened. It is at that moment that you need only invite the light in, and the light begins to transform the darkness. It's when you are at your edge of darkness that the dawn is but a breath away. As you transfigure your humanity, you are transfiguring the energy of the humankind, pure and simple. Course in Miracles says, when you heal, you are never healed alone. It also has a line where it says, millions yet unborn will benefit from the work you do here today. As you transfigure your humanity, your sense of yourself, you're transfiguring the energy field of all humankind, pure and simple. You are incarnating Christ into the world. You are resurrecting and awakening the dead into eternal life. Take up then your rightful place and begin to give up hiding your light under a bushel. It is indeed time to start standing up to be counted as one who is committed to the transfiguration of human consciousness. How do you do that? You step into your role as part of the lineage of the Christ mind, pure and simple. You are extraordinarily important. You, everyone hearing these words, you are extraordinarily important. You must begin to discipline the mind to not perceive yourself as a small part and not perceive yourself as separate from one another. You must begin to take action to create the lines of communication, even in this third dimensional realm. It's time for you as individuals to step forward in the birthing of Shanti Cristo, instead of writing and waiting upon the handful that seems to have gone a little further ahead of you. In truth, you are part of that one mind. You, as you listen to these words, if you will but step forward, the whole power of the lineage will support you. So the invitation is indeed bold, and the stakes have always been high. It is the great dream to transform the dream of separation into the dream of perfect remembrance. You are not small, and you are not alone. Many of you are beginning to more deeply be aware that you too can hear me. We might even have had somebody in the past few days have a dream where they were hearing a message from Yeshua. The book says, Let that process continue and deepen. Let it become an equal conduit which extends the atonement of the Christ mind through that which is called Shanti Christo, and have it come through you. For this work to reach its fulfillment in the quickest way possible, it requires the invitation of this lineage to you as a part of this lineage, that you begin to think, quote, where can I step forward with greater boldness to support light moving through me into the physical realm? Where can I drop the pebble into the pond that radiates the vibration of this lineage through me out into the world? For in truth, the world as it exists holds no power over you. I hope that in this simple sharing, your mind has been a little shaken, and that you've been brought to a deeper stillness, that your mind has been brought back to the reality of what attracted you to this vibration in the first place. For in that moment of attraction, your heart was thrown open. It was thrown open through the portal of initiation. Your soul is what has attracted you back to this work, back to Yeshua, back to the way of mastery and the way of the heart and the way of transformation and the way of knowing. Your soul has always known the capital T truth, and it has simply answered the call. And yet, it takes vigilance and discipline to always remember each day and not fall back asleep again. For the temptation of the world is just that you begin to think that all those things that are walking around asleep in the world have greater knowledge than you do. And so, even though many of them are asleep, maybe being asleep is the way to be. No, it's not. For all of those sleeping will be transfigured in the twinkling of an eye. The sleeping call out in their slumber for someone to stir them from their sleep by modeling and expressing and then communicating this quickening vibration of light, which is the presence of the Creator in the physical realm. Indeed, you've chosen to come into this dimension as part of a very grand work that is going on multidimensionally. You are indeed a part of a rather large family. Many of you will continue to deepen your ability to communicate with me. Honor and love one another. Recognize that you've come not to live ordinary lives, but to play out the greatest drama ever enacted upon the human plane. That is your role. That is your function. That is your purpose and your life. It has indeed been a great honor to be the one selected by my Creator to undergo this laser beam purification called the crucifixion and resurrection as a part of a much larger picture. It has been a great honor to be the one through whom you have opened your heart to the love of the Creator. It has been an honor to serve as a Savior and a Messiah. And yet, in truth, that is not the end. For in the end, it can only come when perfect equality as the Christ mind is established in all hearts and minds. So join with me then in this great work. Join with me. Do not shy away from that which your heart would call you unto, but rather dive deeper. I will never leave you, and I will never take my hand from this work until it is indeed all of it is completed. I have great love for you always, and I anticipate with all minds, I participate as all minds are called to awaken. I am but your brother and your friend, ever dedicated to revealing that which my Creator would reveal through me, and reveal it to you and anyone with the eyes to see in just the right way, at just the right time. You are as I am, and together we are transfiguring humanity. I was a prototype for that which was to come, an expression in space and time of that which all of you have decided to be. And yet, that destiny is but the remembrance of what you've always been, beyond the veil of all illusions. Peace is with you always. Hear the call, accept the invitation, and let us continue in the greatest story ever told. Amen. So choose for love over fear. Choose for love over fear. You have the option. Many of us are getting all caught up in the physical realm and the finances and the politics and the sporting arena. Many of us are choosing to get sucked into the electronics of our world. And all of that is okay. And at the same time that we're doing any of that, we can choose for love over fear. And that's our invitation over and over and over again, choosing for love over fear. And again, I can't choose for love over fear if I stay stuck in the intellectual. Right? In the way of mastery, I think it's even on the 5th page of this book in the first lesson, if I'm remembering correctly, where they bring out the first axiom. And a little bit later on, after that first axiom, it says, on the same page, it says, hey, look, yep, I was right. Page number 5, the first step in awakening is to allow into the mind. Just allow this into your mind. You don't have to accept it absolutely true. You don't have to believe it's true. Just allow this into your mind. Nothing that you experience is caused by anything outside of you. You experience only the effects of your own choice. And it says, during the first part of this course, we're going to be building on that first lesson, on that first axiom. And we understand that your mind is going to be saying, oh, wait a minute, that can't be true. And so 5 paragraphs later, small paragraphs later, it says, listen, the way of the heart is not the way of the intellect. All the thoughts you can generate about how this axiom isn't true, I experienced all kinds of things that I didn't choose. All the thoughts you have about that are in the intellect. They're what's been programmed into you. And this way of the heart is not about the way of the intellect. It's about the way of the awakened heart. Your intellect was never designed to be your master. It was never designed to be your primary user interface for life. Your intellect is supposed to be a servant, a tool you pick up in certain situations. The awakened heart is what was designed to be your primary user interface. And it says here, the heart is that which feels all things. You don't run away from things. It doesn't deny and suppress things. The heart is that which feels all things, embraces all things, trusts all things, and allows all things. Now, that same phrase of descriptions is what they call love in other parts of this book. Love embraces all things, trusts all things, allows all things, and thereby transcends all things. The heart is that in which the soul rests eternally. So your heart is not just your soul. Your heart is even bigger than your soul, your connection to the one mind. The heart is that which is beyond space and time. And it is that spark of light in the mind of the Creator, which is called the Christ. Only in that will you find the peace that you seek. You can't think your way into the peace. We were reading that earlier from Stephen Davis in Butterflies Are Free to Fly. You can't, and from Jed McKenna and Robert Scheinfeld, they've all come to the same conclusion. You can't think your way into the peace that you want. You can use the observing powers of your intellect to alert you to the early warning signs that you're feeling tightness or tension or upset. And you can use that as a signal that you're off the mark, that you're attached to something or identified with something that isn't serving you, that isn't true with a capital T. And then you can breathe and soften and cancel everything you think you know about that and cancel every goal that you have about it, everything you think you want from that. And if you want an ultra shortcut to this work and Michael Ryce's reality management worksheet to use in the moment, on the fly, take one of those calming breaths, comfortably fill your lungs, pause for 2 or 3 seconds at the top with your lungs full, and then consciously slow the exhale down so that it lasts 4 to 8 times longer than it took you to fill your lungs. And gently recite some form of this thing that's available as I call it the forgiveness pattern that's on mindshiftersacademy.org website on the educational materials page. I cancel my need to be right. I cancel my need for anyone or anything to change, including myself. I specifically cancel any goal that's arisen in my mind for now. And I ask to be shown the hidden part of my mind that's actually creating this upset. I'm going to put my conscious logical mind on the shelf for now. I'm going to understand that the intellect is just a very limited practical tool that's not going to help me when I'm in emotional pain or fear or sadness or guilt or shame. And I'm going to take another one of those calming breaths and slowly, consciously restrict the exhale and gently recite, I cancel my need to be right. I cancel my need for anyone or anything to change, including myself. I put my conscious logical mind on the shelf for now, and I ask to be shown the hidden part of my own mind that's actually creating this upset. And as I breathe and soften into that, I switch from my intellect as my primary user interface, I switch over to my awakened heart and I trust that whatever unfolds in the next moment, whether it's within me or seeming to be without from outside of me, is going to be part of what I need to see to begin to heal here and move forward. And with that acceptance and allowance and trust and willingness as life unfolds, I experience life very, very differently. And that's our invitation in this work. So with that, I will welcome Jeannie Ryce. Welcome, Jeannie.
Thank you, Dr. Tim.
I don't know how this is going out to people as an invite when the Blog Talk Radio is down. Today I didn't have the time to text other people, but we do have the other 3 people on the call. So I will remind us all that we come from love. We're made of this stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. And invite you to have a wonderful show.
Thank you. I'm going to reclaim as host, and
Is it
hopefully
letting you? Is it letting you do that?
Yeah, it did.
Perfect.
And it still is recording. So thank you very much.
You're
We'll see
entirely
how this
welcome and
goes.
deserving. Have a great show.
Thank you. So welcome everybody to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. And today is December the 12th, 2024. And we don't have a call-in number, but if you are on Zoom, you have the option of putting a hand up if you want to talk. And Michael will be with us here in just a second. He just walked in from outside. It is super cold here today. Hope everybody's staying warm. I guess winter is officially with us. It's 37 degrees here. And I think that's supposed to be our high. So hopefully, Dr. Tim and I, he probably already mentioned that we have a meeting with Needle Saturday. And the gentleman at Poditize is working on moving all of the archives from Blog Talk to them. And then they broadcast it out, syndicate it to about 20 different radio podcast stations. So you can pick up the archives from whatever podcast you choose, whether it's Spotify or iHeart or whatever. As soon as we get that and get a few more things ironed out at Nettle, we'll be able to go live. We're actually going to do a test show. They've never had two hosts do one show. So we're going to practice tomorrow how it will switch over from Dr. Tim to me at the end of the first hour. So we'll see how that goes, whether I have to sign in again or if it's an easy switch. And if we get all that worked out and we get to where, I was having challenges getting it, I did a test show and attempted to tell it to send me the audio and the transcript, which that's one good thing that Nettle automatically transcribes the show. And I tried to get it to send it to me and it said it did, but I didn't get it. And he seems to think that they originally created Nettle for the iPhone. And so they're adding, they've added all of the things for Android. And so I haven't had an opportunity yet to see if I did it from my iPhone, if it would send me the transcript. But we get all those things worked out. So then we have, we can download the audio and the transcript, and then I can upload it to Poditize, and it will be blasted out along with their past archives. So we're getting really close. So hopefully, and I'm not sure what's going to happen then if Blog Talk continues to be down. During the 8 days that we are in Nashville, we had special shows planned to play, and Nettle doesn't do pre-recorded shows like that. So I'm going to ask him about that Saturday as well. But right now they are not set up to do that. And so I'm not sure how we're going to make those available. Dr. Tim may do the first hour and then we not be able to do the second hour recordings if Blog Talk is not available. So I just think, and I may be incorrect, but they've had so much technical difficulty. And since they're down to the last month of even being in existence, seems like they're not trying real hard to get us on. Michael, we've got your video, but not your, there we go. And then we get your audio. Okay, welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. Delighted and honored that you're here. It's cold outside. I don't know where you are, but I was just up doing some finishing touches on the garden, and it is cold out there. And since we did not record yesterday, so that we've got the consistent or complete record of what we've done with the Book of Thomas, I'm going to cover what I covered yesterday again. So I hope you're not bored about that, or if you've got any questions, any processing to be done, any way we can support you, just put your hand up, which you do by going down to the somewhere here, not sure where, or you could just unmute yourself and say hello.
If you're on a computer, it's under, there's a little button at the bottom that says react. And if you click the react button, then it gives you options of raising a hand or giving a thumbs up or whatever.
Cool. So if you're out there in listener land, we don't have to give you a phone number because we're all on the same system. And once we get things set up with Needle, that'll be the end of the need to make phone calls. Anybody in the world that has access to an internet connection will be able to be part of the conversation. So that's pretty cool. And all it will take is a connect through Needle. And did you talk about Needle, Jean?
I did mention that we have a meeting. We're going to do a test run Saturday to see how the switchover goes from Dr. Tim to me, because he'll be signed in as me as host. And so then when I come in, we'll see how that switches. And
make sure it works well.
Yeah.
So if you're out there in listener land, you might want to download the program Needle, N-E-D-L. And at some point, it looks like if everything follows through the way it looks like it's going to, and it certainly appears to, then sometime in the next probably 3 weeks, we will be switching over to Needle. and you'll be able to listen to the show. And automatically, if you put your phone number into Needle when you download it and select us as a favorite, you'll automatically get a notification. You don't even have to remember that we're happening. I don't know what time frame before the show, but a few minutes before the show, Needle will send you a text. So all things advancing in the world, and we're looking at what kind of new levels of technology we can come up with to keep this moving, to keep this available to wider and wider groups of people, with the vision and the goal to do what we need to do. The goal each day is to do what we need to do in order to complete the vision of making these tools available to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. And you can help us do that if you have anybody that you think might be ready for this conversation. It was interesting. I got a call this morning from a gentleman who was at Heartland. He actually lived in Theodosia. Some might remember the Theodosia hardware store, the Ace Hardware. Well, he was a young man that ran Ace Hardware for his dad way back in the early days. 40 years ago, we established this morning, or thereabouts. And he called this morning ready to pitch in. He'd come out a few times back in those early days to a couple of workshops, and I was kind of pleasantly surprised that he shared a couple of basic ideas that come out of, especially the healing through relationships, that he had really integrated into his life. And he's like, well, now I'm 65 and I'm ready to go to the next level. So pretty cool to see how sometimes it takes so long. I mean, he went through quite a bit of tough trouble to find my phone number. The last contact I had with him was about probably 17 or 18 years ago. We were in Key West where he was working, and saw him then, but hadn't had any contact with him in 18 years. And prior to that was almost 40. So you never know when you plant a seed, when somebody's come around. As I say, I was pleasantly surprised. He actually quoted some things from the Healing Through Relationships workshop, word for word. So it burned into his brain. He said, I've been living that one, but I need more tools. So anyway, if there's anybody that you know in the world that you think might be ready for this, send them a link to our website, send them a link to the app, send them a worksheet. You know, we now have the main workshop that we do, Why Is This Happening to Me Again, available free on our YouTube channel. So grab the YouTube link for Why Is This Happening to Me Again, and a request. Give it as a Christmas present to every person that you know. And who knows what appreciation and thanks you're going to get from people if they tap into that. And of course, you can also assist and support us in other arenas if there are projects that we're working on that you could help us with. We have a couple of gentlemen who are going over our radio shows from the last 15 years and converting them to MP4s so that we can put them on YouTube. So our YouTube presence is growing. I don't know, we're probably up to about 12 or 1,400 videos, Gene, on our YouTube channel. And so if there are projects that we're working on that you might be interested in helping with, we have not opened Heartland since COVID struck. 2019 was our last intensive season there. And then the next 2 years, COVID was pretty crazy, so we refrained from opening Heartland. And the last 2 years, it's frankly been more work than I was ready to do, to go out and open buildings, get buildings ready, get the property ready, and then at the end of the season, have it close it down. And if we had enough of a crew of people who were really, committed to the work that might assist in that happening, then maybe next summer we'd do another intensive season of Heartland. It's after, close to 40 years of doing intensives there every summer. It's kind of strange to not be doing that. We are looking at doing a 20 or a 21-day intensive starting the 2nd of May If you're interested in doing Why Is This Happening to Me Again, we're looking at doing a 9-day Why workshop starting on May the 2nd. And that 9-day Why workshop will include a pre and post personal code evaluation. It'll include Why Is This Happening to Me Again? Healing through relationships, communication. Did you hear what I think I said? Purpose, personal power, and commitment. Empowered to heal. Hands-on energy field work, mind shifters, and still point breathing. So it'll be a 9-day residential, awesome food. And so that'll start, at least at this point, we've got it tentatively scheduled for May the 2nd. Following that, for those who want to deepen their whole understanding of the process and the personal code evaluation that we do, we're going to do a 3-day training on the personal code evaluation, and then a 9-day teacher training. So if you're interested in any of that, drop a note to Jeannie, Jeanie, at whyagain.org. And she'll put you on the list for that intensive. It'll be residential. It'll be here in Virginia. There's a really nice retreat center we've used before, just 15, 20 minutes up the road from here. And so we've got that space tentatively scheduled. We'll see how it all falls together. Other than that, if you're out there with a question, unmute your microphone, say hello, or put your hand up, hit the button down at the bottom, then put your hand up, and Jeannie will know you want to talk to us. She'll unmute you, and we'll have a conversation if there's any support we can be. Otherwise, we'll go back to statement 90 from the Book of Thomas. And number 90, if you haven't been joining us for the show, we're going through the Book of Thomas, which is a series of sayings written down by a man named Thomas Didymus, that was a follower of Yeshua directly, and it was core wisdom sayings that he offered to people in that time. So this first one we're going to cover today is number 90, where he says, "Come to me, for easy is my yoke, and my lordship is gentle." And lordship would be my guidance, my tutelage. I'll be gentle with them, not going to beat up on you like the Pharisees do. And if you'll take on this yoke, that is, if you'll take on this body of work, and it's interesting, there's a section in the scriptures that I like to refer to where Yeshua has a fairly large group of disciples, much larger than the 12 that we normally think of. And he instructs them on what has to be done. And when he gives them the instruction, and if you read that passage, he uses an idiom when he describes what they have to do. And what he says that gives them that instruction, again, it's an idiom. You can tell when you start looking at what their response is. He says, "You've got to eat my body and drink my blood," which, would be communion, according to today's standard, or the brain cells that we got from the Greeks. But what he was actually saying with that as an idiom was, you're going to have to go deeply into yourself and partake of every energy and every tool and every process that I have shown you. And you're going to delete from your mind everything that prohibits you. You're going to face everything in you and everything in your generations that has ever torn you out of the experience of yourself as love. And you're going to get rid of it. You're going to forgive it. You're going to remove it. And we're not told exactly how many disciples were there, but we're told that there was a group of them who heard that instruction, began to grumble, and walked away, left, saying, "Too hard a saying. Who can hear that?" It's interesting. This gentleman that called me this morning said, "Here I am. I've been very successful in business. My life's been rolling along, and I'm 65 and I'm miserable as hell." And he said, "I wish I'd listened to you 30 years ago and picked up these tools and really put them to work. There were a couple of things he said, I got it, and I've been living those things, but I felt I already had everything all handled, so I didn't really do what you had suggested in terms of taking on this body of work. And that's, in essence, what happened with Yeshua. Half of the disciples at that point said, too hard a saying, and they turned around and they left, and they never came back. And as he's saying here, in essence, in this saying 90, what he's offering for someone who's got the eyes to see and the ears to hear, he's saying, easy is my yoke. It's like, I'm going to put a load on you. I'm going to put a burden on you. I'm going to ask you to do something. But relative to the Pharisees, remember he said about the Pharisees? He said, for they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. In other words, the Pharisees haven't done their work, but boy, they can sure tell everybody else what they should be doing. And they load them and they burden them, they put a yoke on them that's too hard to bear for the average person. And he's saying, my yoke is easy. It's gentle. And in essence, what he's offering is, yes, you are going to face, if we look at the world as we know it historically, just looking at, the last 100 years, what most everybody knows about what's gone on the planet the last 100 years, the wars, the starvation, the insanity, the atomic bomb, you look at that craziness and the barbaric behavior that so many have done. And then think 2,000 years ago, how barbaric things were. As an example, and this is a piece where even today, people misuse some of the words from the ancient teachings to justify their violence. Moses said to those around him, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And you hear people today saying, well, even Moses said, and I could take vengeance. And that's what people believe he was talking about. And when you look at those words through a mind of hostility or fear, it sounds like permission. You remember, Yeshua said the first law is Rachma. It's a condition in the frontal lobes of the brain that keeps you connected to your original essence, love. It keeps you in your human life rather than the hostility and fear-based mind that believes that a guy named Moses gave permission. When you look at what Moses said in that circumstance, he didn't give permission. He was putting a limit on the barbaric violence people were doing to each other. He was saying, okay, so if somebody knocks out your tooth and you have to have your vengeance, go, okay, go. But the most you can do is take out a tooth. If somebody knocks out your eye, yes, okay, if you have to have your vengeance, go do it. It isn't permission, it's a limit. What comes to mind is one particular story, just to think about how barbaric people were at that point. There's a story recounted where there's a young chieftain's daughter, and they're one of the Jewish tribes. This chieftain's daughter ends up becoming sexually involved with the son of the chieftain of another tribe. And of course, that's a monstrous no-no back then. And the young man, repentant, comes to the father and says, but I was in love with her and I want to marry her and I'll do anything. So the girl's father says, all right, bring your dad here, bring your father here. He's the chief of this other tribe. Here's what I require if you're going to marry my daughter. I require, and the tribe that she had become involved with this young man was not Jewish. So he said, okay, here are the conditions. You must convert to Judaism. Now, one of the things that had to happen when people converted to Judaism was the men had to be circumcised. You can imagine that a man who yesterday was circumcised is not much of a fighter today. So they circumcised all the men in the southern tribe, and then they went in. The father, as vengeance for a young man having had sexual intercourse with his daughter, slaughtered every man, woman, and child in the tribe. Every one of them. That's how barbaric they were. Moses was saying, stop it. You can't do that. The most you can do is the equivalent of what was done to you. So the presence of love and care and gentleness and respect was spoken about, but rarely ever activated. So this is pretty significant in statement 9, where Yeshua says, my yoke is easy. The load I'm going to put on you is easy, and the way I will teach you is gentle. I've developed a set of tools with which you can actually free yourself of rage and guilt and fear and generational pain and trauma and alcohol and, the insanity of what has happened in the generations. So he says, my yoke and my lordship is gentle. And so if you'll take these tools and put them to work, you'll find rest in yourselves. This gentleman I spoke to this morning was sharing that while he's pretty wealthy, he's done very well in business, has a beach house, sitting on the beach house. And he's like, and I'm just miserable. I don't get a moment of peace. And anyone who has not gone in and dealt with the generational patterns of their family and their cultural system is filled with whatever's happened in those generations. So Yeshua says, if you'll take these tools and use them, it's going to be a whole lot easier than what the Pharisees are laying on you. And what you'll find is rest. So Yeshua's done his work. He functions from his own human life, from love. So his correction is mild, it's light, it's easy. And since he offers usable tools, it's effective. And even so, many refuse his yoke. Many refuse to do what's required. And I recognize it really well. I've seen people, this gentleman lamented that he hadn't picked up and used the tools 30 years ago. And when you realize, when you ask somebody to step in and do their inner work, what you're asking people to confront can be pretty heavy duty. In the ancient scriptures, they use different metaphors for the value of the work. In one case, it's the pearl of great price. In another case, it was the treasure hidden in the field. A man bought a farm, and found a treasure, and went and sold everything he had just to buy that one field that had the treasure in it. And once you do your work and find your inner life, that's the treasure that's being spoken about. So once you've chosen to follow the guidance, there's going to be work to do. He's not saying, oh, look, here, I'm going to give you this, and bingo, everything will be fixed in your life. No, he says, my yoke is light, my burden is light, but there's going to be work to be done. It's not going to work miracles for you. Not going to fix everything in your life, but it's going to give you the tools with which you can fix it. Now, those who didn't want to pick up that yoke went, oh, there's nothing I can do. I don't need to pick up the yoke. I'll just form a religion that says he's going to fix it for me. He's going to do it for me. There's a work to be done. And rather than senseless struggles trying to figure out how to do that work, he says, here are the tools. And so our objective here is to support you in making these tools functional in your world. As statement 90 offers. And then statement 91, those who are wanting him to teach them, those who are following him, say, tell us who you are, that we can believe in you. And he uses the word test here. And test in that context would be, you have some understanding. So he says, you test out the face of heaven and earth. But he who is before you, you do not know. And you do not know how to test this moment. In other words, you don't know how to read. You don't understand who I am, and you're looking for a shortcut. In essence, when they say, tell us who you are so we can believe in you, he's like, no, it's not about me. Many want to follow some kind of hero leader. Yeshua said, no, it's not about me. You're looking for mental assurance from me that I can fix you. No, I'm going to give you tools. And right now you're stuck in the world of outer appearances. So you want some assurance from me. And basically what he's saying, he's talking to people who have not yet understood that there's an inner world and an outer world, and they're still so stuck in the outer world that they've not taken this work into their hearts, into the deeper parts of themselves. So you've heard me say it 1,000 times. The number one pseudo solution of the non-being mind is if I could just figure this out. And in essence, what this quest is to him, this question is, tell me so I don't have to figure out what you're going to do for me. In essence, what they're asking him is, give me the deepest levels of understanding, but don't make me work for it. And he kind of ridicules him a little bit. You don't know who's before you, and you don't know how to read or understand this moment. They're the people that he said that his work would only be functional for those who had the eyes to see and the ears to hear. Now, I think we're fairly well assured that most everybody in his audience had what we call physical eyes and ears. He wasn't talking about eyes and ears. He was saying, you have to have the brain cells. And the brain cells that you have to match the brain cells that I have in order for you to make sense of what I'm saying. And in essence, he's saying, you don't know how to test this because you don't have the brain cells. You have a clue what I'm talking about, but you know there's something important here. You've heard me use the example before of, let's imagine we've got somebody from Russia that wants to come to a workshop, and I don't speak any Russian. And I contact you being the best translator of Russian to English and English into Russian in the world, and I know you have an extra room in your house and that you would be delighted, I'm quite sure, to pick this fellow up at the airport, house him, translate for him. And I make the request, and you're, yes, I'd love to do it. You pick him up at the airport, you bring him to the workshop. We have a great time. We go out for dinner a couple of times. We have lunch. It's just, everybody really likes this guy. And at the end of the week, when you're ready to take him back to the airport to head back to Russia, I don't speak any Russian, and I want to convey how enjoyable it was to have him there and what I think of him. So I ask you to tell him that I think he's really cool. And you turn to him in your best Russian and you say, Michael thinks you've got a low body temperature. Now, you translated my words perfectly, but you didn't say anything about what I meant. That's what he's saying to this group of people. As they're saying, tell us who you are so that we can believe in you, so that we know that you can fix us. He says, you've got brain cells for heaven and earth. You've got brain cells for the external world. But as far as me, who's standing before you, you don't have a clue what's going on. You don't have the brain cells. And one of the challenges that I find most challenging about this work is how many people won't hang around long enough to build the brain cells to really start to understand what it is we're talking about. So instead of figuring it out, he's saying, you're going to have to pick up the tools. You're going to have to do your work. Because you can't understand inner teachings with an outer mind. You can't change what's going on within you by whatever struggle, whatever you use in the outer world. It's not going to happen. So it's going to take it's almost like, an infant. I can remember when Ari was young. I remember we talked about this on the show. You might have been on that show when we did. But what we noticed, understanding you had to build brain cells in order for the mind to show you something. We think we're looking at what's going on in the outer world when what we're really looking at is pictures painted on the inside of our eyeballs. And so perception is a construct, and you've got the brain cells for your mind to be able to bring forward that construct accurately. And for me, a good example of it, we have a house where we've got a deck, a concrete deck that you step out on, and then there's about a 2-foot drop to the grass. And it was interesting to watch Aria as she grew, and she'd walk over to that edge and just walk off. Like, she did not have the brain cells. Her brain could not replicate at that early age that there was a difference in levels between the deck and the grass below. So it would be just falling off the deck. And it was just interesting to watch as she developed those brain cells. And one day, she can tell the difference in the height of things. It's just a developmental phase. And anything that your mind can replicate, it replicates because you have the brain cells for it. And everything that the mind can replicate, by definition, if you've got the brain cells for it, it's from the past. So in essence, what Yesh was saying is, we're going to take you beyond your own mind. It's just not a mental process. And you're trying to figure it out, and that's not going to work. So building the brain cells to recognize what the meaning is of what's being said is a challenge. And let's see, we're at about 25 minutes to the hour. So I'm just going to open it up before I move into the next statement and see if there's anybody out there with a thought for us, question, something going on in your world that you'd like to share, something we can support you with.
It is all quiet out here.
All's quiet. Okay, well, let's go on to saying number 92. So in saying 92, Yeshua says, seek and ye shall find. But those things concerning which you asked me, and he uses the words in those days, and basically that translate as you those things you asked me in the past. So he's saying, first order of business, if you're looking for a result or an answer, if you seek for it, you will find it. And then, but those things concerning which you asked me in the past, I did not tell you then. And what I hear him saying here is, you asked questions beyond your understanding, and therefore I could not answer them. You remember he said, there's so many things I would say to you, but you cannot hear them. So as people begin to do their work, certain questions come about, but people are tapping in, and they're advanced questions, but they don't have the advanced brain cells to understand them. So he's saying, when you would ask me one of those questions, I didn't answer it. I didn't tell you then. Then he goes on to say, now I wish to tell them. And you're not seeking after those answers now. So he's saying that, your search has yielded answers, and you ask questions that you did not have the brain cells to comprehend. Kind of like you asked things way beyond your ability to grasp, so I didn't answer. And now that you have the brain cells, even though those questions are not on your mind, because you're ready for them, I'm going to give you the answers to those questions. And to put those answers to use, because someone now has the brain cells to comprehend them, to really understand what they mean and apply them. Giving the answers prematurely means that the answer would be useless to someone. But he says, because you're ready, I'm going to answer them, even though you haven't asked it. You're not interested in those particular questions right now, but I'm going to give you those answers. And that's saying number 92. Again, seek and you shall find, but those things concerning which you asked me in those days, I did not tell you then. Now I wish to tell them, yet you seek not after them. But I'm going to give you the answers anyway. You're ready for them. And then saying 93. Give not that which is holy to the dogs, lest they cast them on the dung heap. Cast not the pearls to the swine, lest they grind it to bits. And that this particular saying relates directly to that last saying, number 92. He was saying there was no sense in giving you answers that you could not comprehend. And when the mind is in or controlled by the filters of hostility or fear, remember when they asked Yeshua, what's most important in the law? He didn't say love your neighbor. He didn't say love God as yourself. In Aramaic, what he said is have rachma. When you think of a neighbor, and neighbor means anybody that you think about, it's a mental word, neighbor. So he said you must have rachma when you think of a neighbor, when you think of the Creator. And by so doing, you maintain self. Rachma, it turns out, is a filter over the frontal lobes of the brain. We don't even have a concept for this in our language. We don't have any word that even starts to approximate in English or the derivative languages in Latin, in Greek, that English was derived from, the ancestor languages, to be more correct. We don't have such a thing as what his answer was to that question. And so it's been mistranslated, misinterpreted as something about a venial form of approval toward your neighbor that's called loving them. You'll notice that you can play this game of pretending you love your neighbor all you want, but the minute that they violate a goal you hold for them, notice what happens to that love. Gone. What happened? The unresolved hostility or fear was resonated by holding a goal that someone refused to achieve for you. And that someone gave you the opportunity in that instance to heal. So the word Rachma in Aramaic is a word that describes a filter in the frontal lobes of the brain, a gateway. It's a dual function. There are basically three filters over the frontal lobes of the brain. There's Rachma, there's hostility, and there's fear. If fear is the active filter over intentions, then that filter will limit the quality of your intentions to those which are negative. If hostility is the active filter over intentions, then the data set that's available through the frontal lobes of the brain, because of being filtered through hostility, means that the only intentions the quality of those intentions will be destructive. And then the third filter, the one he says is important, is Rachma. When that filter is active, then all of the intentions that your mind presents you with will be based in love. And people say, well, why is that? So what? Why is that important, Michael? And here's where we get into, one of those questions where he's saying, don't throw the pearls before swines, the holy to the dogs, to those who don't have the brain cells, because if you give it to someone prematurely without helping them to build the brain cells, then they'll throw it away. And if they throw it away prematurely, then they've lost, perhaps forever, the opportunity to make use of whatever that principle is. So Rachma is a filter that allows only intentions keyed to love to come to awareness. And the reason that's important is because intentions are the raw material of your goals. We hear about a lot of people talking about and writing books about the power of intention. Dan McDougall, who was my partner in creating the Laws of Living course, used to have a saying about intentions. He said, intentions can no more move a muscle than a shadow can carry a stone. Shadow looks real, looks solid. The stone's real and solid. Why can't the shadow pick it up? It's just not in its power. An intention can't move a muscle. There are more processes to go through in the mind before motion occurs connected to that intention. So the first order of business he's saying in that case is you must make sure that all intentions you hold are keyed to love. And then the second aspect of Rachma is that it is a gateway. If you hold a newborn child and you tap into the essence of that newborn, everybody's answer that describes the essence of the newborn is that of love. If love is not present and active in someone, it's because this gateway is closed, and it's closed by the activity of hostility or fear. The true self is not available unless that gateway is open. So the world teaches us to live in an hostility and fear-based mind. If you have doubt of that, I'll just ask you to perform one simple exercise. Get a notebook, and draw a line an inch wide on the left side of the page and leave the rest of the notebook wide open. And then sit down in front of the television set. Don't spend any more than 3 minutes on any one channel. Flip from channel to channel to channel about every 3 minutes. And across the spectrum, as you sit and watch, every word that you hear that is truly based in love, being a state of being, and who we are, every word that represents that, put a check mark in the 1-inch column on the left-hand side of the page. And every time you hear a word based in hostility or fear, put a check mark on the right-hand side of the page. Just watching that one simple medium. How long do you suppose? How many pages do you suppose you'll fill with check marks on the right-hand side before you even get one column filled on the left? It's going to be a lot. So we've been brainwashed into an hostility and fear-based world, a world of blame, of guilt, of fault, of shame, and of victimhood. And what we're looking to do with this work is to free you from that, to give you the tools with which to free yourself from those, what often, too often, become generational dynamics. So we came in literally with a love-based mind, and then we were converted to a fear and hostility-based mind. That would be the dogs and the swine that he's talking about. And the objective of the work is to convert people back to a love-based mind. So in essence, he's not degrading people as animals. In that previous statement, he's just saying they don't have the brain cells. And what he's saying now is, if you offer an understanding to a mind that doesn't have the brain cells to grasp it, then they're likely to, as he uses the metaphor of dogs, throw it in the dung heap, or, crush the pearls that you offer them. So no sense in giving someone answers they can't understand. It's about building. Again, remember, he says there's so many things I would say to you, but you can't hear them yet. He's saying, I have the brain cells for so much more here, but there's nothing for us to talk about because you don't have the brain cells for it. You literally can't hear it. And if you offer a particular truth to someone before they're ready, before they have the brain cells to hear it, they're liable to throw it out and never value it. And therefore waste it. And worse than wasting it, recognizing that being given it prematurely, they may lose it for all time. So if you are developing the brain cells for spiritual truth, for truth that allows you to live on the level of cause rather than at the level of effect. Then value what you receive and discuss it in circles where it's going to be useful rather than going to be thrown away or destroyed. If somebody treats a truth as garbage because it came to them prematurely, then having rejected it at any time in the future when it would have been useful to them, when it would have been meaningful, they're very likely to just throw it away or oh, I already been there, done that, not interested. Where what you find with this teaching, it's very much like a spiral. You start out and as you spiral upward, you come back around to the same principle and you go, oh, that's what that means. And then you spiral around, you come back around again, oh, that's what it means. And there are many, many, many layers of meanings that over time you develop as you do this work. So value what opens the next level to you. Share that value with those who share your values, and together you will raise each other up. And then saying 94. Yeshua says, he who seeks shall find. And he who knocks, to him it shall be opened. Now, if what you're finding is that there's a lot of drama and trauma in your life, and what's opened up to you is a world of pain or turmoil, like the gentleman I was speaking about earlier, quite wealthy, quite successful, and miserable. Oh, he's found. If one comes from a place of misery and makes their way in the world, like is the hero of the world, is, the big success story with the house on the hill, but doesn't have a human life, what use is it? If what you found is not leaving you in a space where, without all kinds of activity and getting, you've heard me say it before, it's one of my favorite sayings. If in all you're getting, you don't get being, then you aren't. So in essence, what Yeshua was saying here is, if you found misery, guess why? Because that's what your genetic predisposition was and brought to you. And if what's open to you is pain and turmoil and conflict, one of the things this gentleman said this morning, people just love me. And I have 5 ex-wives. They all loved me. But the underlying pain is what he would find time after time after time. And the work of going inside and cleaning up that pain-based mind means you have to spend time inside. It's interesting that children are brought up in the world, and most often what is done is distracting them with all kinds of fun, shiny things in the outer world. Oh, look, 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 look. Like what's going on in the outer world is where life is, and that's not where life is. Having things, nice, but it's not life. And so recognize what you found, and what you have found is what you have been seeking, although you might be in denial and might be blaming somebody else for the fact it's been delivered to you. If it was delivered to you, it's because you asked for it. And so learning how to undo your asking. What is undoing your asking called? Well, one word for it from the ancient Aramaic would be forgiveness. Forgiveness is the removal of that which never belonged. It's not letting other people off the hook because what never belonged is in here. And so most people are going to have to discern that their wanter, their asker is in the unconscious mind. It's in the accumulation of unconscious data. And if what one wants is stuff and things and things and things, then, yeah, they'll get lots of it. But without the presence of your human life, which is love, that will seem rather empty, futile. And what we're looking to do is to support people having the tools to be free of that emptiness and to fill that space from the discovery of the inner true self as the presence of love that is then brought forward through the mind, not run by the mind, but a person recognizing, a being recognizing that the mind is a vehicle of expression. It is not the place where life happens. It's just a tool. And we'll just invite you to take a deep breath. And as you let that breath out, just let everything in your structure soften. If there's any tension anywhere in your structure, let yourself breathe into that tension and let it open. As you look with your inner eye, you'll notice that there is a light in every cell of your structure. Allow yourself to breathe in and strengthen that light, strengthen that presence of love in every cell of your structure. So that love becomes recognized as a state of being that you own rather than something you're going to get from someone else or something you're going to give to someone else. Yes, you can give your presence to another. You can give the presence of love that you are in your life, in your relationships, or you can withdraw it. If you withdraw it from someone in your life, you withdraw it from yourself. Our objective is to support you in discovering who you truly are as the presence of love and recognizing that if there is anything in you that is less than love, that's a fixed subject for forgiveness. Forgiveness being the removal of what never belonged in your human structure in the first place. So holding the space, you may take a few extra minutes and just be in this quiet, connected space, connected to the presence of love. Perhaps allowing yourself to be out of your mind for a few minutes and getting ready to create the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world, and we're here to support you being able to give it to everyone that you know. Thank you for joining us, and create the best year yet of your eternal life.